Imagine waking up one morning, not in your bed, but in a room that feels both familiar and unsettlingly alien. The walls echo with whispers of your own choices, your own beliefs, but none of them seem truly yours. Every decision you have made, every desire that has driven you, feels borrowed from expectations you never consciously accepted, from a script penned by the invisible hands of society, family, and the world around you. You are living, yet not entirely awake. The life you believed was yours is slowly unraveling beneath the weight of a profound question. Who are you, really? We spend years constructing identities as if they were shields, layering ourselves with masks designed to please, conform, or survive. The mask of the dutiful child, the ambitious professional, the devoted friend, but behind each layer, a part of you whispers, almost inaudibly, hinting that the true self, the one untouched by fear, by approval, by inherited expectations, remains hidden, waiting, sometimes suffocating under the roles you perform. The truth? It has never been told. And yet, it is one of the most essential journeys a human being can undertake, to rediscover, reclaim, and reconcile with the self that has been obscured by life's relentless currents. What does it mean to truly know oneself? Can a life be authentic when so much of it is molded by forces unseen? In this exploration, we will walk the boundary between the conscious and unconscious, examining the shadowy corners where our deepest truths reside. Drawing inspiration from psychology, philosophy, and the lives of those who dared to confront their inner worlds, we will confront the question that has haunted thinkers for centuries. When does life truly begin? By the end of this journey, you will not only glimpse the hidden self within you, but also recognize the courage required to step out from the comfort of conformity and into the uncharted territory of your own mind. The path is neither simple nor safe, but it is, undeniably, transformative. To understand the journey toward self-discovery, we must first trace the forces that shape the self in the first place. From the moment of birth, we are immersed in a world teeming with expectations, rules, and patterns, an intricate web spun not only by our families and communities, but by the collective consciousness of society itself. Each tradition, each belief system, every moral dictum is absorbed, consciously or unconsciously, imprinting on the psyche with a subtle, persistent pressure. Who we become is not merely a product of our choices. It is a tapestry woven from the threads of countless external influences. Psychologists and philosophers have long debated the origins of identity. Carl Jung, whose insights continue to illuminate the human condition, introduced the concept of the persona, the mask we present to the world. According to Jung, the persona is necessary. It allows us to navigate social structures, to communicate, to belong. Yet it is also limiting. By dedicating ourselves to the mask, we risk losing sight of the inner self that exists beyond appearances, a self often overshadowed by the expectations of others. Historically, societies have reinforced these masks through education, religion, and cultural norms. In Eastern philosophy, the notion of Maya, or illusion, reminds us that much of what we perceive as reality is a projection shaped by collective belief. Similarly, in Western thought, figures like Socrates and Nietzsche questioned the authenticity of conventional morality and social roles, urging individuals to look inward to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. The lesson is timeless. The path to self-awareness is rarely straightforward, and the obstacles are often invisible. Consider the everyday experiences that quietly mold the self. A child praised for obedience learns to value approval over curiosity. A young professional rewarded for conformity internalizes ambition not as passion but as expectation. A society that equates success with external validation trains its members to perform roles, to inhabit masks carefully constructed for survival, acceptance, or admiration. Over time, the genuine self recedes, obscured by layers of learned behavior, fear, and social conditioning. Yet even within this complex framework, the human psyche contains a countercurrent, a shadow, in Jungian terms, that holds what has been denied, suppressed, or ignored. The shadow is not merely the repository of flaws. It is a reservoir of hidden potential, the essence of individuality waiting to be reclaimed. To confront it is to acknowledge the discomfort of contradiction, the tension between what is expected and what is authentic. It is to recognize that every life lived entirely within the confines of external expectation is, in a sense, a life half-lived. Throughout history, thinkers and creators who dared to explore the depths of the self, writers like Dostoevsky, artists like Van Gogh, innovators like Einstein, often faced internal and external resistance. Their struggles illuminate the universal tension between conformity and authenticity, between the world's demands and the self's longings. The pursuit of self-understanding is not merely philosophical, it is existential, demanding courage, introspection, and a willingness to navigate the labyrinth of one's own mind. As we delve further into this exploration, it becomes clear that the self is not a static entity but a dynamic interplay of forces, inherited, chosen, suppressed, and expressed. The journey toward discovering it requires both the illumination of thought and the courage to confront one's shadows. Without this conscious effort, life risks drifting along a path dictated by external pressures, leaving the authentic self unheard, unseen, and unfulfilled. Understanding the origins of our identities is not simply an intellectual exercise, it is a necessary prelude to awakening. Only by tracing the roots of our conditioning, by recognizing the forces that shape and constrain us, can we hope to distinguish the authentic voice from the chorus of imposed expectations. And it is this voice, the self waiting beneath the layers of societal influence, that beckons us toward the journey ahead. As we move from understanding the origins of identity, a pressing question emerges. Why does this journey toward self-awareness matter so profoundly? The answer lies not in abstract philosophy alone, but in the lived experience of being human. Every individual carries within them a tension between the life they perform and the life they long to live, a subtle yet persistent discord that shapes behavior, emotions, and relationships. When left unexamined, this discord festers, manifesting as anxiety, dissatisfaction, or a vague, persistent sense of emptiness. Have you ever felt trapped in a cycle of expectations, as if you were running along a path someone else carved, one step at a time, never pausing to consider whether it truly led to fulfillment? Millions experience this silently, conforming to roles prescribed by culture, family, and social norms, never daring to question the script. The danger is not simply external, it is internal, residing in the unnoticed compromises we make daily, the small betrayals of the self that accumulate over years. Historical examples abound. Consider the lives of those who outwardly seem to have everything: wealth, fame, recognition, yet suffered quietly from the consequences of living inauthentically. Artists whose creativity was constrained by patronage, thinkers whose radical ideas were suppressed, leaders who sacrificed personal conviction for social approval. Their stories reveal a universal truth. The consequences of neglecting the inner self are often invisible until they manifest catastrophically in moments of existential crisis or public downfall. The modern world amplifies this issue. Social media, societal comparison, and relentless performance culture create pressures unlike any in previous generations. Each post, each image, each public interaction becomes another layer of the mask we wear, another reinforcement of the persona that distances us from our true selves. The shadow, which once existed quietly within, now risks being buried deeper, obscured beneath curated identities and manufactured perceptions. This rising tension is not merely psychological, it is profoundly ethical. To ignore the inner self is to accept a fragmented existence, to trade authenticity for approval. Every decision guided by expectation rather than understanding of the self carries with it a subtle but consequential compromise. What begins as small concessions, suppressing a thought, hiding a desire, escalates into a life largely unexamined, governed by fear and habit rather than conscious choice. And yet, within this struggle lies the opportunity. The very discomfort we experience, the restlessness, the subtle unease is a signal, an invitation from the psyche to confront what has been ignored. It whispers that growth, transformation, and liberation are possible. Those who heed this call often embark on journeys that challenge them deeply: introspection, therapy, spiritual practice, philosophical inquiry. They confront their shadows, question inherited beliefs, and, gradually, reclaim parts of themselves long neglected. Consider the paradox. The very act of recognizing the masks we wear exposes both vulnerability and power. The vulnerability arises because authenticity threatens comfort certainty, and social acceptance. The power emerges because awareness allows choice, and choice is the first step toward freedom. Herein lies the rising issue in stark relief. The human condition is defined by the tension between societal influence and inner truth, between conformity and authenticity, between living a borrowed life and discovering one's own. Have you ever paused, in the quiet of night, to wonder which parts of you are genuinely yours? Which beliefs, desires, and fears have been inherited, and which have been chosen? The question is unsettling precisely because it touches a core truth. Most people never ask it, and in not asking, they risk drifting further from the self they might have been. This is the moment when the problem crystallizes. The disconnection between persona and self is not merely theoretical, it is existential. The rising of the issue is the accumulation of every choice made without reflection. Every moment the inner voice is ignored. It is the silent erosion of authenticity, a creeping shadow that threatens to dominate life if left unchallenged. In this context, the urgency of self-discovery becomes undeniable. To understand, to reclaim, to integrate the self is not a luxury. It is a necessity for mental health, for meaningful relationships, and for a life lived fully rather than superficially. It is the difference between existing and truly being alive. Imagine a life meticulously constructed, each day carefully orchestrated, yet beneath the surface, something vital erodes. The danger is silent, invisible, creeping through the cracks of routine and expectation. It is the peril of a life lived as a shadow of itself, of a mind constrained by invisible chains. At first, the cost is subtle. Dissatisfaction, fleeting anxiety, moments of inexplicable sadness. Over time, these fragments of unease accumulate, forming a pressure that can no longer be ignored. The peril lies not in the external world but in the self, in the gap between who you appear to be and who you truly are. This gap is fertile ground for compromise, for moral concessions, for the quiet betrayal of one's deepest values. The life performed for others, validated by applause or approval, becomes a gilded cage. And the most terrifying aspect? Many never notice the cage until the bars have embedded themselves in the bones of habit, in the architecture of identity itself. History is strewn with cautionary tales. Leaders who pursued power while ignoring conscience, artists who conformed to market demands at the expense of authenticity, individuals who surrendered their dreams to duty each succumbed to the hidden danger, a slow erosion of self that ultimately led to anguish, scandal, or a profound sense of emptiness. The world may praise their outward success, but the interior life tells a different story, a story of isolation, compromise, and unfulfilled potential. Have you ever considered the consequences of ignoring the inner voice? The shadow, the repository of suppressed desires, unacknowledged fears, and untapped creativity does not disappear. It festers, manifesting in unexpected ways. Anxiety, addiction, destructive relationships, or a haunting sense of meaninglessness. The danger is not merely psychological, it is existential. It is the slow death of a life never fully lived, a spirit shackled by conformity, and an identity fractured between masks. Visualize it. A brilliant mind, rich in potential, yet constantly measured against external standards, crafting a life designed to appease, impress, or survive. The brilliance is dimmed by self-neglect, the mind clouded by the persistent hum of obligation and expectation. Meanwhile, the authentic self, vibrant and untamed, retreats into shadowed corners, waiting, desperate to be acknowledged, yet increasingly difficult to reach. Society often exacerbates this peril, rewarding compliance and punishing divergence. From childhood, obedience is taught, individuality is shaped, and deviation is subtly discouraged. The paradox is stark. The very structures meant to guide us toward success can simultaneously stifle the essence of who we are. In ignoring the self, we inadvertently perpetuate a cycle of repetition, mediocrity, and silent suffering. The crisis peaks when the divergence between persona and self becomes unbearable. Moments of reckoning appear as personal failures, professional crises, or emotional collapse. Those who have never confronted their shadows find themselves unprepared, their inner discord erupting in chaos. Conversely, those who engage with their inner world experience discomfort, yes, but also clarity, resilience, and a renewed capacity for authentic action. This climax is more than a psychological observation. It is a call to awareness. The danger of a life unlived is universal, touching every individual who sacrifices inner truth for external validation. It is the quiet threat behind smiles, the tension beneath applause, the unspoken cost of survival in a world that prizes performance over presence. As we stand at this precipice, the stakes become clear. Ignore the shadow and risk a fragmented, hollow existence. Acknowledge it, confront it, and a transformative journey begins, one that may be uncomfortable, painful, and confronting, but ultimately liberating. The choice is stark, the consequences profound. Either remain shackled by expectation, or dare to step into the uncharted realm of authentic selfhood. The hidden danger is no longer abstract. It is real, intimate, and immediate, and it waits for each of us, in the silence between daily routines, in the questions we avoid asking ourselves, in the dreams we dare not pursue. The question now is not whether the danger exists, but whether you will confront it or continue to drift, quietly imprisoned by the life you inherited rather than the one you were born to live. The aftermath of living disconnected from oneself is rarely immediate. It creeps in, insidious and relentless, infiltrating every corner of existence. Relationships falter not because of overt conflict, but because the soul cannot fully resonate with another when it is fragmented within. Friendships become shallow, love is tinged with expectation and performance, and family bonds are strained under the weight of unspoken compromises. The persona, polished and convincing, hides the fractures beneath, yet the cost is unmistakable. Consider the psychological consequences first. Anxiety becomes a constant companion, creeping into moments meant for joy. Depression silently settles, often without reason, because the self, the authentic, vibrant core, has been neglected for so long. Creativity, once natural and effortless, becomes a laborious task, every expression filtered through the lens of approval. Even success, when achieved, is tainted by hollowness, because it is never entirely one's own. Have you ever noticed how those who appear to have everything sometimes radiate the deepest dissatisfaction? This is not coincidence. It is the shadow's subtle yet unforgiving echo. Socially, the ramifications ripple outward. A society composed of fragmented individuals becomes a mirror of collective unease. Conformity masquerades as harmony, yet beneath the surface lies tension, resentment, and unspoken conflict. Leaders who fail to integrate their inner selves make decisions lacking empathy. Communities that suppress authenticity breed mistrust and superficiality. The consequences are systemic, extending beyond the individual to shape institutions, culture, and generations. Even on a historical scale, the cost is evident. Nations led by individuals who ignore internal reflection often pursue policies steeped in ego and ambition rather than wisdom and understanding. Movements built on performance rather than conviction falter. The shadow, when magnified across a population, manifests as societal disillusionment, unrest, and moral ambiguity. History's most turbulent moments are not solely the product of circumstance, they are born of inner neglect writ large. The personal cost is equally stark. Those who live disconnected from their authentic selves often wrestle with identity crises, experiencing a life of almosts and what-ifs. The dreams they suppressed, the passions left unexplored, accumulate as regret. Time, relentless and impartial, presses upon them, revealing the discrepancy between life imagined and life lived. In moments of solitude, the mind confronts the cost with unforgiving clarity. Questions that were once avoided, who am I really? Have I lived truthfully? Emerge, persistent and inescapable. Even worse, the disconnection creates vulnerability to manipulation, whether by others or by internalized fears. A person who has ceded authority over their own desires becomes susceptible to influence, guided by the expectations, opinions, and pressures of the world. Every decision is filtered through a lens not entirely one's own, and every consequence is compounded by the lack of self-governance. Power, freedom, and choice, the very things that define human existence, are compromised. Yet, the consequences are not merely negative. In the recognition of the shadow's impact lies the potential for transformation. When the hidden costs are acknowledged, the individual gains insight into the depth of their condition. Awareness becomes the first step toward integration, toward reclaiming the self that has been neglected. The shadow, once feared and ignored, becomes a teacher, revealing the areas in which courage, authenticity, and reflection are required. This is where the narrative takes a critical turn. The weight of consequence, while heavy, is also instructive. Every failed relationship, every unfulfilled ambition, every internal conflict carries a lesson. The shadow is both warning and guide, exposing the terrain of the psyche that must be traversed for true liberation. Those who embrace this confrontation find that the darkness, while frightening, contains the seed of self-discovery. Have you ever considered that the suffering you endure is not random? That the restlessness, the dissatisfaction, the unspoken tension are signals pointing toward the self you have yet to fully encounter? This is the unspoken truth. Consequences exist not to punish, but to illuminate. The darkness reveals what the light has neglected, and only by confronting it can one hope to achieve wholeness. In this way, the shadow teaches that consequences are inevitable, but they need not be permanent. Recognition, reflection, and deliberate action can transform the weight of what was ignored into the foundation for self-mastery. The alternative, however, is a slow erosion. An existence lived in fragments, a life observed but never fully possessed. The stark reality emerges. The failure to confront the inner self is not a temporary setback, it is the slow unraveling of one's potential, a silent tragedy witnessed only in retrospect. Amid the shadows, there is a path. It is neither easy nor comfortable, but it is the only route toward reclamation of self. The first step is awareness, honest, unflinching recognition that a life unlived has consequences that touch every facet of existence. To confront the shadow is to acknowledge its presence, to name the parts of yourself you have ignored, denied, or buried. The archetype of the seeker becomes crucial here, one who ventures into the unknown, who confronts fears and desires alike, and who emerges transformed not by external reward, but by inner clarity. Awareness alone, however, is insufficient. Reflection and deliberate action are the twin pillars that support real change. Just as a sculptor removes layers of marble to reveal the form within, one must shed societal expectations, habitual defenses, and ingrained fears to allow the authentic self to emerge. Journaling, meditation, dialogue with trusted companions, or even professional guidance are instruments through which the self can explore its contours and reclaim territory long abandoned. Integration is the next stage. The shadow is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a part of the psyche to be understood and harmonized. Its fears, impulses, and suppressed desires are signposts, guiding toward untapped creativity, latent courage, and deeper empathy. Carl Jung himself emphasized this process, describing shadow work as the journey toward wholeness. By engaging with the parts of ourselves we fear or disdain, we cultivate authenticity, resilience, and a profound capacity for self-determination. Consider the archetype of the alchemist. Transformation is possible not by denying the base elements, but by transmuting them into gold. Similarly, the darkness within the human psyche, when faced with courage and honesty, becomes a source of insight, wisdom, and creativity. The anxieties that once paralyzed can fuel purposeful action. The regrets that once haunted can become catalysts for intentional living. The fears that once constricted can guide toward liberation. Practical steps follow naturally from this philosophy. Daily rituals of self-reflection, conscious decision-making that honors personal values, and intentional engagement with life's uncertainties cultivate the muscle of authenticity. Social structures and external pressures may persist, yet the empowered individual learns to navigate them without surrendering the inner compass. The journey is neither linear nor free from setbacks, but every confrontation with the shadow reinforces the connection to self, deepening understanding and fortifying resolve. History and literature provide abundant examples. Philosophers, artists, and leaders who faced their inner shadows often produced work of timeless relevance, not because they avoided darkness, but because they engaged it fully. Think of the poet confronting loss to create verses that resonate centuries later, or the scientist challenging internal doubt to reveal universal truths. These figures illuminate a fundamental principle. The shadow, once embraced, transforms from obstacle into ally, revealing potentials previously inaccessible. This revelation carries practical and existential implications. By facing the hidden corners of the mind, by confronting the uncomfortable truths, one can break cycles of repetition and mediocrity. The risk of despair diminishes, replaced by the clarity of purpose. The hollow applause of conformity is exchanged for the quiet satisfaction of alignment, the resonance of a life lived with integrity. In this alignment, one finds freedom. Freedom not from circumstance, but from the internal bondage of inauthenticity. And so, you are invited to take action. The tools are not exotic. They exist in daily choices, in moments of honesty, in the courage to look inward. The path is open to anyone willing to meet themselves without fear or pretense. It is a journey that requires patience, persistence, and compassion for oneself as well as others. It is, ultimately, a reclamation of identity, creativity, and the profound dignity of living a life that is authentically yours. In this revelation, the shadow ceases to be a source of fear. It becomes a teacher, a guide, and a compass. It whispers the truths often ignored, illuminates the paths often avoided, and challenges the courage of those willing to answer. The journey from fragmentation to wholeness is arduous, yes, but the rewards are transformative: peace, purpose, and a profound intimacy with the self. And as you stand at the threshold of this inner journey, the question emerges not as accusation, but as invitation. Will you step forward into the unknown, confront the shadow, and reclaim the life that is waiting for you? Or will you remain adrift, a spectator to your own existence, never fully realizing the potential within? The journey of self-discovery does not end with awareness or even integration. It echoes beyond the individual, shaping the world in subtle but profound ways. Those who dare to confront their shadows leave a legacy not in monuments or accolades, but in authenticity, courage, and the quiet influence of lives lived fully. Each act of honesty, each moment of alignment with the true self, ripples outward, inspiring others to question, to reflect, and to seek their own inner truth. But what if the shadows remain unexamined? What if the fragments of self continue to dictate decisions, relationships, and life paths? The cost is measured not in immediate catastrophe, but in a slow erosion of potential, a lifetime of almosts and could-have-beens. The story of a life unlived is a cautionary tale, a silent testament to the consequences of neglecting the deepest parts of oneself. Yet within this tension lies an eternal question, one that lingers after the story concludes. Will you remain a fragment, shaped by external expectation, or will you step boldly into wholeness, claiming the life that has always been yours to live? The answers are not found in fleeting validation or transient success. They are discovered in the courage to look inward, to embrace the shadow, and to align every choice with the truth of your own being. The legacy you leave is the life you dare to live authentically. And the question that remains is both invitation and challenge. Will you answer it? Thank you for listening.